This chapter is Defense Against Disease, chapter 36 in your text. So what are the mechanisms of actually acquiring an infection? First thing we talked about is microbes. The microbe is any microscopic organism, and that includes bacteria, protists, fungi, and viruses. Remember, fungi include both yeast and mold. Most bacteria do live in the water or the soil, and since your food mainly comes from the soil, vegetables and things like that, you are exposed to bacteria on a daily basis from both water and soil sources. Normal flora is a term used for bacteria living in or on your body. Normal flora actually helps you. It prevents the pathogens from attaching to your body. So the pathogens are exactly what you do not want to be on you. Pathogens have the ability to produce disease. So they're any microbe that can produce a disease. An emerging infectious disease is a new pathogen that has not been discovered previously, or more likely is a pathogen that has mutated. Mutated just means to change. And when pathogens change, they grow so that, or they change so that they can resist treatment. For example, they can resist antibiotics. A good example of that is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. That Staphylococcus aureus strain has become resistant to methicillin, which is a type of penicillin. So since that bacteria is now resistant to that, that means that we have one less antibiotic to treat that infection. HIV is an example of an infectious disease that's still considered emerging because there's still tons of research going on about it, as well as it was discovered in the 80s, and that's still new scientifically. Ebola, as well as an emerging infectious disease, as well as West Nile. You know, just from listening to the news, that West Nile was one of those things that we see mainly in the summertime because of mosquito bites, but it's emerging because we've just got it on the radar. We've just had cases of it within the past 10 years or so in the state of Mississippi. So there's three major lines of defense. So once you have a pathogen that has entered your body in some way, your body's immune system works to fight off that pathogen. There's non-specific external barriers that we'll talk about. There's your innate immune response as well as your adaptive immune response. So what is a non-specific barrier? Non-specific, that word means can prevent any infection. So it's not just against one type of pathogen, but it's against all types of pathogens. So non-specific barriers work to prevent the disease from ever getting into your body. Just your anatomical structures work to prevent this from happening. Your skin, your cilia, your secretions, your tears, your saliva, and your mucus are all structures that are non-specific defenses. Now the innate response is external barrier. So if that non-specific defense is breached, then your innate response is going to kick in. So white blood cells, phagocytes, natural killer cells, inflammation, and fever are all part of the innate response system. And then you have the adaptive immune response. Adaptive is it. That's your final line of defense before you have to go to the doctor and get some medicine. Immune cells selectively destroy invaders, and then you have a unique thing with the adaptive immune response. You have your memory cells. So I have on here note table 36.1 on page 693. That just talks to you about your innate and adaptive immune response to invasion and when with those responses kick in. And then more importantly, you have several questions from table 36.2 on your test on page 694. And these you're just going to go through and memorize. So know what the function of each of these types of cells on that page are. So how do nonspecific defenses function? Skin and mucous membrane are external barriers to invasion. You know about mucus already. You've seen mucus. Mucus actually works to trap bacteria, and mucus is found in the digestive, respiratory, and urogenital tract. So let's talk about skin and its secretions first. Most bacteria can't live on the skin because the skin doesn't have the nutrients needed for most bacteria nor the water needed for the bacteria to grow. You also have sweat glands and sebaceous or oil glands on your skin, and those work to kill off bacteria. They actually have antibacterial properties, the sweat and the oil. Staphylococcus, though, is a bacteria. It's a genus of bacteria that can live on your skin. Staphylococcus epidermidis is the #1 bacteria found on everybody's skin. And remember, that's normal flora. So you want that bacteria to be there. You don't want to try to wash it off. It helps protect you against the pathogens. The mucous membrane, like I said before, mucus traps bacteria and has antibacterial substances, proteins specifically, that work to kill bacteria. You have your cilia that sweep mucus up and out. So when you cough or sneeze, your cilia is helping you get rid of bacteria. And then if you actually end up swallowing bacteria, the stomach, the pH of the stomach is, a little bit less than 2. So the stomach acid itself helps to kill pathogens. Urine is slightly acidic, and that prevents the growth of bacteria, so it helps protect you against urinary tract infections, kidney infections. Then you have tears and urination, diarrhea, and vomiting. All those, if you get an infection, help to get rid of those infection agents. Now your innate immune response. Innate is internal defenses. You have white blood cells. White blood cells are leukocytes. They destroy bacteria. You have the inflammatory response that helps to control infection, as well as fever. We think fever is a bad thing, and it is if it gets to a certain degree. But fever in general is a good thing. It slows down the growth of bacteria, and then through that helps the body fight off. So leukocytes are natural killer cells. Phagocytes are just a general name for leukocytes, macrophages, neutrophils, dendritic cells. All of those are phagocytes. The word macrophage, macro means large or big, so macrophages are big eaters, and all of these phagocytes work to fight off infection. They basically eat the invaders. So all of these cells work together and, in quotes, patrol the tissues of your body to help recognize any invaders that might be present. So natural killer cells are a type of leukocyte. Natural killer cells are important in preventing cancer as well as killing virus-infected cells. These cells release proteins, and those proteins just put holes in the membrane of the infected cell and then put enzymes into those holes to kill off the infection or really just the cell. Now the inflammatory response, this is your discussion question on your test. It's on page 696, but I suggest you watch the YouTube video because we kind of added some things to it in lecture. Make sure you have that discussion question written down correctly from the video. So inflammatory response causes injured tissues. Those tissues can become warm, red, swollen, and painful for the reasons that we talked about in class. The response attracts phagocytes to the area. It helps clotting to happen, pain happens. But again, make sure you understand the figure on page 696 as well as that YouTube video. So just in the figure, looking through it, you can see that you get some sort of prick or something that enters into your skin. And with that entrance of that foreign material, you also get bacteria that are entered in. And those bacteria and that damage to the skin has wounded the mast cells. And those mast cells release chemicals. Those chemicals are called histamine. Histamine is what you think about when you think about having allergies. You get all the, runny nose, itchiness, the redness as well. The histamine does several things, but one that you see in step 4 increases capillary blood flow and permeability. Permeability just means how leaky the vessel would be now, and that leakiness is going to allow for white blood cells, allow for platelets to come out of the blood and work to seal off the infected area, as well as to call in the phagocytes. Phagocytes come out and they work to start eating bacteria and anything foreign that's present. But again, make sure you look at the YouTube video. Let's say 696 is just basics of what's going on, but know those steps in that video. Fever. Fever is extremely important. First of all, it lets you know that something's wrong with you when you have a fever. Second of all, the fever is working to fight off the infection. The fever is controlled by the hypothalamus. Macrophages release pyrogens. In some instances of some infections, and those pyrogens travel in the bloodstream to the hypothalamus, and that's what raises the temperature. The pyrogens cause an increased fat metabolism, and that generates some heat in the body. Your blood vessels constrict, which reduces heat loss. So again, you're working to heat the body up. Shivering can happen when you're sick, and that shivering raises body temperature. And then you have a reduced concentration of iron in the blood. And you'll remember that iron is a limiting nutrient for bacteria, so an iron deficiency is actually going to work to slow the growth of bacteria. The pyrogens stimulate virus-infected cells to produce interferons. Interferons work to prevent the spread of the infection, and they also stimulate natural killer cells. And remember then, those natural killer cells will come in and they see the viral infected cell and they'll work to kill that cell off. So interferons and natural killer cells work